When you take a lion out of its natural habitat and put it into captivity, it can go a bit stir-crazy. Life tends to move much more slowly when you're on the outside looking in, and with his injury record lately, Zlatan Ibrahimovic can speak to that better than most. The last time he featured for Milan was during their Scudetto clinching win over Sassuolo in May of 2022. But this is Zlatan we're talking about here. Can we really expect him to just sit quietly in the background? In July of 2023, it will mark 14 years since Zlatan was unveiled at Barcelona's Camp Nou in front of 60,000 supporters. Each one more excited than the last about the kind of magic that Ibra could bring to Catalonia, alongside their own magician, Lionel Messi, and in front of a supporting cast of Xavi, Iniesta, and plenty of other world beaters.
Barcelona's fans, we love beautiful football, and what Ibra was doing in the pitch was unbelievable, was incredible.
But by May 1st, 2010, his relationship with certain individuals at the club would reach a toxicity level so high that they were screaming at each other following a match against Villarreal. They won 4-1, by the way. Happy days. And it feels like with every passing year, the beef between Zlatan and both Guardiola continues on and on. So, let's go into why this war of words is still ongoing, the cause of it, why he didn't fit at Barcelona, how he actually changed their recruitment strategy when it came to strikers, and finally tackle the question, was his whirlwind single season at FC Barcelona really that bad? Hey guys, I'm Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV. If you're new around here, welcome back if you're a returning subscriber. I'm very excited to get into this one, but before we do, a quick word from our sponsors, OneFootball. OneFootball has you covered for all things football, but given this time of year, it's transfer season, baby, and they have you covered. Transfer rumor raters to let you know about which transfers have been confirmed and which are just hearsay. On top of that, in-depth articles to break down the movements of everyone. God, I'm getting sick of this Enzo Fernandez stuff, man. Just leave me alone. As well as plenty more features. Watch highlights from matches you missed, interviews from your favorite players, behind the scenes videos from your favorite clubs, and so much more. So use the link in the description or this QR code for a free download on iOS or Android, and you'll never be out of the loop when it comes to football. With the rest of your life, I mean, hey, that's on you, man. Okay, let's jump into it. Zlatan really hasn't been afraid to speak his mind on anything, and he particularly doesn't hold back when discussing his time at Barcelona, nor is he afraid to name Messi and Guardiola as two of the reasons as to why his move didn't work out there. Zlatan, of course, released a book, of which he has chapters devoted to his one-year Barcelona vacation, but he's also spoken to the media about that era as well on countless occasions. Even as recently as November of 2022, Zlatan sat down with Canal Plus, and when asked about his worst memory in football, he said, quote, "My worst memory? I think it was Barcelona, but not for football. There, it's happened to me to think too much. Yes, I disappointed myself. I did things differently. I thought twice before acting, and I disappointed myself. I lost my identity there. Afterwards, I found it again, and that allowed me to conquer the world." Of course, each and every year there has been seemingly a new quote from Zlatan that disparages Guardiola, and more recently, he even flip-flopped on his thoughts surrounding Lionel Messi, whom, funnily enough, is seemingly part of the reason as to why his Barcelona move didn't work out, and why Barcelona actually had to change their recruitment policy when it came to strikers. But we'll get to that later, because first, player swaps are more often than not a massive myth in football. It feels like for every 10 that are mentioned or mooted or rumored to happen, maybe one of them will actually happen. But back in 2009, Barcelona and Inter would go on to make one of the biggest player plus cash swaps in football history, really. At least looking at the personnel involved. At this time, Zlatan Ibrahimovic was fresh off of a fantastic spell with Inter Milan. Playing under Mourinho, Zlatan was reaching new heights, scoring 29 and assisting 11 across all competitions. He had cemented himself as one of the best attackers in the world at the time. Meanwhile, Samuel Eto'o wasn't exactly a slouch for Barcelona, not at his peak perhaps, but certainly one of the best attackers in the world still. With Zlatan at 28 and Eto'o at 29, they looked like good candidates for a swap, except Inter also received 69.5 million euros, according to their official books. To get the Barcelona fan perspective, as well as his expertise on all things Barcelona, Alex from Galinha de Piel joins me. I've linked to his channel below for any Barca supporters that want daily content on their beloved club.
There was this division, people who really loved Eto'o, and actually all the Barcelona supporters with it, but Eto'o had some issues with Guardiola, the coach. They didn't get along very well, and this caused a lot of trouble in the dressing room. That's why I think, for one side, we were sorry seeing Eto'o leaving, but it was the best. We think that was the best to do this swap, no?
This won't be the first time you hear about that in this video. Yes, conflict between strikers and Guardiola while he was at Barcelona will come up again, and it's not solely down to Guardiola himself either. But I think it's fair to say that when you simply look at Zlatan's numbers from his single season at Barcelona, there's nothing that would point to his time there being a huge failure. In fact, his numbers were quite good, especially in La Liga.
We are talking on the bad moments, but he had the great games. Barcelona's fans, we love beautiful football, like beautiful actions, beautiful skills in the pitch. And what Ibra was doing in the pitch was unbelievable, what was incredible. Then he lost the confidence in the end of the season, but this first part of the season was incredible, was amazing.
Across all competitions, he scored 21 goals and assisted 13 from 45 appearances, so 34 goal contributions in 45 appearances. One of those goals, by the way, came from a substitute appearance in El Clásico, in which Zlatan scored the match-winning goal. But anyway, with so many people, from Zlatan to Laporta calling his move to Barca a failure, surely it has nothing to do with output, right? So what were the numbers hiding from his performances on the pitch?
Well, I think we can consider two different Zlatans. The Zlatans from the first half of the season, that was a Zlatan that fit very well in the squad, because here in the numbers, as you say, the numbers are pretty good. And actually, if you compare the numbers he had in Manchester United, in Juventus, Barcelona numbers are very, very good. The problem was that in the first part of the season, he understood very well the positioning, like he had to work for Leo Messi, okay? And I think as soon as the season, we were moving forward in the season, he started to, get this ego that he had. Of course, all the best football players has this ego, and Zlatan was one of the best strikers in the world. And here he started to just playing differently. He wanted more to be the star, and we start realizing problems between Messi and Zlatan, and influencing of course the rest of the team. That was a problem.
And in fact, Zlatan's own words speak to this as well, pun intended, as he wrote in his book. Some quick context: he had a flying start for Barcelona, scoring 7 goals in his first 7 appearances in La Liga, but something shifted in the dressing room after that. Zlatan has previously said, quote, "It was a childhood dream to join Barcelona, and I was walking on air. It started well, but then Messi started to talk. He wanted to play in the middle, not on the wing. So the system changed from 4-3-3 to 4-5-1. I was sacrificed and no longer had the freedom on the pitch I needed to succeed. In the team, the play is all around him. Pretty naturally, actually. He's brilliant, but now I had arrived at Barca and scored more goals than him." And once again, we have no reason to believe that Zlatan is lying or embellishing things in his book or when speaking to the media, as this lines up well with how Alex and plenty of Barcelona supporters interpreted the situation that was at hand.
Xavi and Iniesta, who were the midfielders back on the time, they were looking all the time to find Messi. And actually, I think as the same of the whole team was looking all the time to pass the ball in the right moment to Messi, because Messi was deciding games. And actually, Guardiola's mentality on that time was, okay, what can I do in order to give Messi the space for him to be, to score, to play well? And we had the problem that Zlatan needed exactly the same.
Now, before we dive into this section, we need to get something cleared up. Saying that a player has a big ego isn't really a revelation of any kind, is it? Most of the top players and coaches, to some degree at least, have an ego. So it isn't necessarily slander or some sort of slur when saying that a player has a big ego. But some players or managers are more outward with their ego. Guys like Zlatan, Ronaldo, Mourinho, Guardiola, those types of guys. But while other players may be more quiet, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are free of ego. And, well, egos do indeed clash.
As you said before, like Zlatan has a big ego, but we know that he has because he show it publicly. But Messi has a massive ego, but normally he don't show it publicly. But we know stories on the dressing room that when he put you the cross, you were out the team. So I think there was a lot of stories inside the dressing room that creates this strange atmosphere with Zlatan. However, most of his ex-colleagues like Piqué, Bojan Kirkic, they speak very well about Zlatan, that he was a very nice guy, always helping, always competitive. So I think it was more between the coach and the superstar, Messi, with Zlatan than the others, no?
And so you had Messi, who wanted to play centrally, and let's be honest, as Alex said, he was deciding games for Barcelona at this time. From 2010 onward, we'd see feats from Messi that no other footballer has been able to achieve in Europe, that only Cristiano Ronaldo, another alien, could come close to mirroring. And so that left Guardiola with a tough choice. Appease Messi at the expense of your new signing, Zlatan, or go in the other direction and upset Lionel Messi, who was fresh off of winning the Ballon d'Or. It's clear the direction Guardiola went in, as from about the midway point in the season or so, the breakdown between Zlatan and Guardiola was evident, or the professor, as Zlatan mockingly refers to him as. There's also a lot of car stuff going down, some metaphors, some real-life car issues that help push the relationship between Zlatan and Guardiola to a breaking point. First, there was a chat that Zlatan said he had with Guardiola at one point when he realized things weren't going so well for him at the club, to which Zlatan said, quote, "I told him, Guardiola, what a friend had said to me. You bought a Ferrari, but drive it like a Fiat." The chat seemed to go well, but then Guardiola started to freeze me out. So there's one automotive aspect, but it actually goes beyond just metaphors in this case.
If we look at that Zlatan point of view, Barcelona coach disrespect him quite a lot, I think, because there was one time early in the season that Zlatan used to go to the training fields with his high-level cars, no Porsche, Ferraris, whatever. And Guardiola approached to him and recommend him or advise him to use low-profile cars. In my point of view, this is something that Guardiola was trying to implement in his team because he had Iniesta, Xavi, Pedro, people from the house, no in-house. So he could do that with these guys, but you cannot do this with Zlatan. I mean, you cannot tell Zlatan how to dress, where to go in the restaurant. You cannot do this with these superstars. And I think Guardiola, he did wrong in this sense.
And would you believe me if I told you that this wasn't the end of the car talk and how cars sort of mirrored the deterioration of the relationship between Zlatan and Guardiola? As Zlatan put it, quote, "In April, before a match with Almeria, I drove my Ferrari Enzo to work. It caused a scene." Of course, this car talk is all just a funny representation of how the relationship deteriorated. That Ferrari Enzo bit being Zlatan sort of sticking the boot in, if you will. But it also shows how Ibra was an outlier in this team. Ibrahimovic refers to Guardiola as the professor because he feels like he ran the team like a classroom, and all of the La Masia products were happy to follow along, while, as Alex said, you can't tell a superstar like Zlatan how to behave. And I mean, as you'll remember, Eto'o and Guardiola didn't get along either, as Eto'o would later say, quote, "I said to Guardiola, you'll apologize to me because it's me that will make Barcelona win, not Lionel Messi. It was the situation back then. Messi would come later. You can ask Xavi, Andres Iniesta, and all the others. That was my era. It was me that made Barcelona win, and Guardiola would ask me for forgiveness." But it's a strange thing. Eto'o would be sent away after just one season under Guardiola, then Ibrahimovic would leave after just a single season under Guardiola as well. It's a strange thing in the sense that Guardiola ultimately bet on the right horse. Lionel Messi is perhaps the greatest player of all time, depending on who you ask. But these are two massive talents in Eto'o and Ibrahimovic that ended up leaving Barcelona for the same reason. They were informed that they had to change their game, their style of play that made them into who they are, and when they didn't want to, they were stonewalled by Guardiola, ignored, according to Zlatan. They had a bust up of varying levels and ultimately left. First Eto'o and then Ibrahimovic, after just one season each under Guardiola, as we mentioned, and this apparently had a big impact on how Barcelona would recruit players in the future, or rather the kind of profile of player that they would look to recruit for the striker position.
I think all the supporters, we were very disappointed because we knew that we had a big star, that we had a player that could really stay for long in Barcelona and score a lot of goals and, won titles. But we didn't expect all this mess to happen in the dressing room because we really wanted Ibrahimovic to be successful in Barcelona. And then the year after is when Barcelona signed Villa. Since that moment, Barcelona was looking for a lower profile than Messi all the time, because we had this experience like, hiring someone with a high profile like Ibra and having these problems with Messi. We were very concerned all the time when we were hiring strikers, because it's not only the relationship with Messi in the pitch. And we were very lucky when we hired Suarez. We were thinking, okay, this might be the same situation. Then we were lucky that they get along very well in the pitch, outside the pitch, and with Neymar as well.
So it's interesting that Messi was almost dictating the transfers for the striker position, but it's not exactly overly surprising either. Take any of the biggest stars throughout the history of football, and yes, there are of course moments in time where two big players hit it off successfully on and off the pitch, but there are plenty more where that isn't the case. For the successes they have had at times domestically at PSG, they have run into plenty of issues there as well between their biggest stars. It's a difficult thing to contend with, because just as Tuchel said at one time, the coach has to become a minister of sport to address the dressing room politics.
And actually, Messi with Villa, they had also some issues, and Villa wasn't a high profile. Playing with Messi is not easy, and I think Zlatan knows that very well.
But just to be clear, in Zlatan's case, he has always maintained that he admires Messi and is disappointed that they couldn't make it work while he was at Barcelona. That absolutely needs to be said and reiterated. So was his move to Barcelona a failure? Well, it's one of those questions that doesn't have a simple answer. As we went over, his output was quite good, even when considering how he rebelled against Guardiola in the latter half of the season, got limited playing time, and his output went down. But then, when you look at how much Barcelona spent on Zlatan versus what they sold him back to Italy for, this time via AC Milan, they took a huge loss. It was ultimately a huge fumble by FC Barcelona that essentially sold Samuel Eto'o, who felt underappreciated by Guardiola, to pay a ton of money for Ibrahimovic, who would ultimately feel the same way, begging the question of, what was the point of all this?
This is the question. Why you hired Ibrahimovic if you're not going to give him the space that he needs as a big star? I think that was a problem, and I understand why Zlatan, he felt disrespect in this sense.
And so that begs yet another question. Whose idea was it? Laporta's or Guardiola's?
That's a good question. Guardiola will blame Laporta, and Laporta will blame Guardiola.
Maybe the answer to that question doesn't really matter in the end. It happened, it's in the past, and both Zlatan and Barcelona went on to conquer the world, as Ibra himself said. Zlatan went on to win more titles in Italy, France, and England. Guardiola went on to win more titles, whether he was at Barcelona, Bayern, or Manchester City. Messi, well, he's a world champion, of course, on top of all the other accolades he has under his belt. But the story of Zlatan at Barcelona will be yet another what could have been moment. As Alex said, he had the style and flair to fit right in at Barcelona. His other teammates liked him a lot, but it was just a right time, right club, wrong circumstances. Thanks for watching this video, and remember to check out Alex's channel listed below for more daily Barca content in Spanish. Beyond that, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, well, you know what to do. Thanks again, guys. I'm Adrian, and we'll see you soon. Ciao.